I'd like to call to order the workshop for the Mayor and City Council for the month of April and ask Councilman Vigliotti to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have a full agenda. In a minute, I'm going to open a public hearing to accept comments on the operating budget. And remember, I'll preface that in a minute. First, I'd like to indicate all council members are here and accounted for. The minutes of March the 6th and March 11th regular meetings and March the 6th closed session are up for approval on Monday night, and I ask if anybody has any additions or comments or corrections on any of those minutes. Hearing none, I'd like to open the public hearing. The fiscal year 2019-2020, or operating budget and constant yield tax rate. Again, the public hearing is designed for comments only. It's not a question and answer session. So if you have comments regarding the budget, I'll entertain any comments at this time. Anybody have any comments on the budget?
Good evening, Robin Fraser, 142 Bentley Street. The first thing that I'd like to encourage you is to lower the water sewer rates. I still support the 50% reduction in sewer rates, but there are increased revenues and decreased expenses that could help you to do 3, 6, or 9%. For example, the $329,000 that was shifted from the general fund to the utility fund a couple years ago to cover salaries. We've been shifting salaries back to the general fund, and my understanding is $126,897 was shifted back to the general fund this year. That Davenport said about $120,000 equals 3% reduction. So there's 3% right there, and since you didn't reduce taxes when you shifted that expense to the utility fund and raised the sewer water rates, I would highly recommend at least 3% since you're shifting that money back. I have been trying to figure out why it would be important to build the O'Brien Street connection, and I have been in planning and been a commissioner and so forth and looked at plans and things before, and I can't see anything that's beneficial to the citizens by spending $1 million to build that little piece of road. And I would suggest that we don't build that piece of road. I drew some maps which I can give you. You're probably familiar, but there are ways to get from O'Brien to Roth pretty quickly and easily. There's ways to get back out to 194. If we're on the other side of O'Brien, same thing. You can go out George, you can get them right on Roth. So there are alternatives, and $1 million is a lot of money. It's 25% of our budget, and I would suggest we do not build that part of the road. And then I also strongly feel that the mileage should be considered when buying the police cars, and again, having had a little bit of experience in these things, the trigger for buying new vehicles should be chronic maintenance problems. If you start having maintenance problems, then it's time to get a new vehicle. So trying to guess when that's going to happen, I don't think is wise. I think it's better to keep an eye on the mileage, and when the a car starts having chronic maintenance problems, then it's time to get a new one. So those are 3 of the suggestions that I'd like to make as you're looking at the budget. I also, I guess these are questions, and we're not allowed to ask questions, but it's hard to make a comment if you don't understand everything that we've been told so far. But there's general funds of over $11 million, but it seems like it should be higher than that with new units coming in and so forth. So maybe I'll send my questions in and try to get them answered.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Does anyone else like to make any comments? Very well, we'll move on to the next item, which is the reception of delegation. I'm very pleased to welcome the Taneytown Lions Clubs and their representatives to discuss a suggestion they have had on their mind for some time and have addressed council with and kind of fleshed out their ideas, I think.
Clara?
Well, good evening. Thank you for having us here this evening to address you. I'm Steve Van Scoik with the Taneytown Lions Club. And could the Lions in the room stand up just so you get a feel for, we do have some representation here tonight. And support. I'm here this evening because of our lion interest in the Taneytown Civic Center and rec facility that we've been talking to the city and other people about for the past year. And to date, we've had 2 formal meetings, and this is our 3rd this evening with the city and council. And what happened in the 4th quarter meeting between us is that you asked the Lions to get serious, come back with our interest and recommendations on the topics we talked about, like location, what we would anticipate, and so on. The Lions have created a committee now of 8 members, full-time, working on this, and tonight we brought back our answers for you and are willing to answer any questions. And I'll try to be brief and not dwell on anything. If you have any questions as we go along, holler at me and we'll go from there. You'll see a table of contents in here that I'm not going to read to you, but the table of contents includes buildings, sites, drawings, Lions interest, and things like that. I would like to spend some time, though, on the mission and vision statement. At the last meeting, you asked the Lions to formulate a mission and vision statement of what we thought made sense. And Mr. Ken Dalwig back here was the person who took that on with the committee. I'd like to read it to you because I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and also because the rest of you don't have any copies. It's the Taneytown Lions Civic and Recreation Committee Mission and Vision Statement on January 17th of this year. Our purpose is to promote and facilitate the construction of a needed civic center and sports facility in and for the city of Taneytown and its families. It is our expectation that the need for such a facility is shared among the many Taneytown community organizations, sports organizations, city officials, community leaders, and the citizens of our city. Our city has excellent parks to accommodate outdoor recreation, but lack any facility that could be used for indoor community meetings, recreational events, and sports activities. We seek to encourage the city and the community support for construction of a facility of reasonable size to match the needs of our citizens. With the need established and an initial design and location secured, we expect to raise the necessary funding through corporate and foundation grants, voluntary donations, as well as special fundraising events. In order to best achieve this goal, we seek to establish a partnership between the Taneytown Lions and the City of Taneytown. Such a partnership is necessary as the city would provide the site for the facility and agree to maintain city services for it. The Taneytown Lions would be granted ownership of the facility. If you picked up the word ownership, you can see possibly where we're heading as we go through this right now. So that's our mission and vision statement we brought back to you that the Lions are reviewed and feel comfortable with. You're going to see different dates for those of you that got copies of this because we're a month late in presenting it, and I apologize. You asked us about a partnership framework for working together. And we see this as a City of Taneytown as a government and a Lions as a service nonprofit partnership between the two of us. We're here tonight from the Lions to put into place a partnership with the City of Taneytown if they're willing and to pursue the city center and indoor sports facility for the citizens and youth of Taneytown. And we see this as a long-term project, open-ended at this point. We're proposing that the initial partnership with the city, if we enter into it, include Lions Paul Garver, Leonard Wance, and myself on the committee. To date, we've been talking in the city to Mayor McCarron, Diane Foster, Nancy McCormick, and Jim Weeprit. And so that's what we propose as a base committee at this point, subject to consideration and change. We have 4 guiding documents the Lions are using for this. We have the feasibility study on the Taneytown Creamery from May the 5th, 2009. We have the business marketing and recruitment plan for the downtown district for Taneytown that was done in April 2003. We've been using these since day one as what I call the base documents that we're looking at that would be what we'd have to update with feasibility studies and build on. We've adopted in Lions a partnership document called Frameworks for Working Together. I've referenced a website here where I'll take you right to it. And we also have a document of 5 steps to build a community center that we're using as reference for our thinking right now. If this partnership moves forward, we see it as an evolving partnership for long-term projects, and it'll start out small and grow in complexity. And the initial partnership, as we read the documents and look at it, would be a recipient partnership where we'd be getting things and money and other stuff. It's cross-sector, no specific sectors of business and government. It's across all of it. And it's a collaborative open framework that we see that we ought to use. As the partnership grows, we believe all new stakeholders will be allowed in and be allowed to participate. Sustainable community operations is a long way away, and it would be addressed later at this point. You ask us, we talked openly last time about 3 Taneytown location sites at our last meeting. The first was a privately owned Dunbar building in North Taneytown. The second was a city-owned land behind the Memorial Park. And the third was an expanded creamery site in the area down where the creamery building is. And you ask us to go away and look at all the pluses and minuses of that, let you know what we think is the best interest to us. The Lions have decided that the Dunbar building in North Taneytown is not acceptable, and we have no interest in it. The park, the city-owned land behind Memorial Park, is possible, but it's not our preferred choice. Our preferred choice is the expanded creamery site and area in downtown Taneytown. I made a note that more space than just the creamery footprint is probably required over the years for these facilities and expansion and all, but the Lions believe that the way the city of Taneytown's moving forward, things are dynamic, and we believe that land opens up, areas change, and so on, and we believe things are workable based on the creamery plot, and we have selected that as our interest. For initial buildings, focus and growth, I brought floor plans for I bought the floor plans back tonight out of your report originally for a Civic Center. I've got them here, but in the interest of time, I don't plan to drag them out and wave them around in the air. But for the Sports Center, I've also brought along, but not put in the package, our initial conception of what a sports complex looks like. It's modeled on a complex up in New Oxford, Pennsylvania, that's existing and used, and it has much versatility for all kinds of events. And I do have an engineering drawing of that we brought tonight that I'll leave. Our growth and expansion considerations and long-range possibilities also include in our thinking a downtown parking garage possibly sometime in the future, and to develop and evolve a Taneytown Creamery District, but right now that's not on our agenda. At this point in time, it's the Civic Center and a sports facility. So our initial starting project above is currently 2 buildings, each standalone, or a new one that does both functions. The final decision and configuration awaits updates of the old feasibility studies and other considerations. So that's the way we would proceed. The next 2 drawings I'm not going to talk about. One's a city blueprint of the creamery site. The next one's a zoning map of Taneytown, so you can see where that falls in it. So, Lions Club initial interest here is that in order for the Lions to serve our citizens and youth of Taneytown, Maryland, we're looking for ownership of the buildings and land defined in this briefing, and we think that would be the way from a point of leadership and doing the best thing for the town. And that's been brought up to the council before. So in summary, the Taneytown Lions Club's ready to move forward with the partnership if it's to happen. And our question, but I understand, I just heard it said you don't ask questions, but I ended with a question. Is the City of Taneytown government and council on board as a partner? Yes or no? So Lions Club's ready to get moving on this in whatever fashion we move forward. We're here to answer any questions you might have tonight and where we go from here and so on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask a question before Mr. Mansquay leaves? Can I ask a question? Who currently owns the creamery building?
I believe the City of Taneytown owns
Yeah.
it.
How about the adjacent property that you might need for an expansion for parking and that sort of thing?
I believe the City of Taneytown owns most of that. and depending on what we end up configuring the buildings like and so on, but I do believe that for the initial 2 buildings, it's city land.
I don't have any questions.
Steve, could you maybe talk a little bit more about, on the mission vision statement page, where you talk about how the city would maintain the services for it, but the Lions Club would be granted ownership of the facility itself? Could you maybe go into a little more detail about what that would entail?
Okay. The question's always been from the beginning who would own the place and who would lead it, run it, manage it, and so on. If I look around the United States at Lion projects in cities and towns, be it parks, be it rec centers, etc., the Lions Clubs of America own a lot of these facilities and run them for the local people and youth. And so we kind of take it that from the beginning, the city of Taneytown doesn't want to be bothered day to day by running facilities like this and operating them. And so we have always thought your interest would be in the Lions taking the lead on this, and then years from now when this gets built, operational, running, and so on, that there would be another organization at some point that would run it that we haven't defined yet. And so once you involve a lot of other organizations into this who want to be part of this for the betterment of Taneytown, they would sign up and so on, and you would have a business model or operational model that would be different than we're sitting here saying the Lions own and run it. We're quite flexible on how civic projects move and how they get run and funded and so on. And if you ask for a real concrete answer today that has to be finite, I don't have that. I have a vision I'm working off of, and so are the Lions. We just think Taneytown's ready for this. We see it all over the country and in other cities, and we'd like to be a part of it and make it happen. Since we don't own any land or buildings at the Lions Club, we also see as a place maybe if it succeeds, we could be able to meet there and things like that. But that's the best answer, Joe, I can give you right now.
Well, what if I maybe gave you like an example? For example, let's say landscaping, right? Like if the city decided in maintaining the property that we wanted to see flower gardens out front, but the Lions Club decided they'd rather see, I don't know, like a vegetable garden or something. In a situation like that, you know, who would decide what goes in where, like that kind of thing? Or is that still off in the future to be figured out?
To me, that's off in the future, but I like both flowers and vegetables and wouldn't see that as a problem. Okay?
Well, maybe I could.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Maybe I could kind of get to what Joe's talking about.
Okay.
A facility like this would be a natural fit, I think, with our Parks and Recreation Department, particularly if, you know, youth basketball, volleyball, whatever indoor sport you wanted to do. So it'd be logical to me to be able to coordinate that through our Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay.
Other types of utilities, I suppose you're talking about, are like water and sewer and electric. We would bear the cost of that. Mm-hmm. And I suppose would need to have some kind of say into construction. In other words, if we were going to bear the utility cost, and certainly we'd want some input into the mechanical plant as far as what kind of equipment was installed and so forth. So I think that kind of, when I heard what Joe asked, that's kind of what came to my mind. So I don't know, maybe I didn't hit that right on, Joe, but that's something what I
Oh, yeah, that's along what I was thinking is that, who would be responsible for what, and if it came down to a decision between two conflicting ideas about what to do at a certain point or in a certain situation, if the Lions Club has ownership, but the city is providing the services and insurance says one thing, but, somebody says something else. Yeah, I mean, I guess for the point of resolution, how would we figure something, just something like that?
I'll make this suggestion. First of all, at first blush, I think this is a pretty good idea. I'm not giving a carte blanche to the details, but the idea of having a place like this for our youth is something we need. I don't argue one bit with that mission statement. But I think in order for us as a council to come to a level of comfort to say, yeah, we're a partner, we probably need to kind of talk among ourselves and come up with some ideas, some pros and cons. We're comfortable with this, we're not comfortable with that. And then maybe get together with y'all again and say, this is, after we discuss this among ourselves, this is what we think. What do you think? And then kind of go from that standpoint. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Or?
Well, I have one question. When you say, is the City of Taneytown Government and Council on board as a partner, yes or no? At that point, are the Lions looking for us to say, yes, you have the land and the building or whatever? Does that go hand in hand? When we say, yes, we're a partner, does that mean we're saying it's yours?
No.
Okay.
If you say, yes, we're a partner and it's time to move out collectively together and put the committee together to begin working this jointly, that's what I'm after tonight. Everything else is wide open to definition and move forward. But feasibility plans got to start getting updated. Money has to be looked at to start, and a lot of things. And I'm looking to get people on the committee between the Lions and the city and to move forward officially, not continue to try to define things in a nebulous environment. I'd like to formalize things.
Are those feasibility studies in process?
No,
Okay.
they are not. We're using as a basis the ones you've had in the file all along.
Yeah.
But we're ready to go. If the city's on board and we can form this partnership committee to start working, we're prepared to go toward funding with the city and other organizations, and we're prepared to go after new feasibility studies and things like that.
Okay.
And we have no constraints on this at the moment. You just ask us to tell you what we felt for feedback.
All right, well,
I wanted to follow up on that thought Diane Foster's just a minute ago.
Yeah.
If the beginning of the document says that you would be the owners of it, but the city already owns the property like I asked earlier, I don't foresee that we'd invest a lot into property that might be owned by a civic organization, but you're talking about the building improvements, having managerial control of that, or actually owning the building on the property, or do you want us to deed the property to the Lions Club? I'm not sure what that meant in the beginning.
Part of our initial discussions were to, back several months ago, or maybe even a year ago, was the idea that the city would give the creamery property to the Lions Club as is, and we'd pay you $1 or something for it. That would at least give us land that would form what I call some value to use to begin the project. So again, we've just been, well, I call it bold, and said, give the Lions ownership. But I think this is all open to discussion. It's just we're trying to get the project moving, trying to formalize a partnership if the city's willing to do it.
there's a lot of legal considerations too. Of course, there's always legal considerations when you do anything. And that kind of advice, I'm not sure we even have touched on or even comprehend at this point, but there's a lot of questions that are running through my mind as far as what is the best source. Maybe a better suggestion would be a long-term lease, a 99-year lease or something like that.
Okay, those are
So
all,
and again, I don't know. I
Okay.
mean, was that a good idea, a bad idea?
right,
But that's some of the stuff we kind of explore, I think.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Looking at your scope and extent, and your growth expansion, all of those things compared to the property, I'm not convinced that that's the appropriate property for what you're trying to do. It's only 0.78 acres. It's not even a full acre, and we're talking about community center building, sports facility building, future downtown parking garage, and an entire creamery district. And I see how maybe a community center building would fit on that, but a sports facility building is not going to fit on that piece. And that's the only piece we own there. We don't have the adjacent property to that. We have the police department, which we're not going to tear that down for it. And the property on the other side of it's not city-owned. So I'm just trying to understand where all of these pieces are supposed to fit on that 0.78 acre property.
I brought up at our last meeting the discussion about other projects being considered by Taneytown and the council, and I was told to look at this only as a creamery project and whatever, regardless of what's going on in Taneytown and the rumor mill, or I'll call it the factual mill on land and other possibilities and combinations. That's why when you ask us which property we preferred, we still like the location where the creamery is, and we've acknowledged in there that there's not enough land in there probably to do everything, but we also are privy to hearing what's, in the rumor mills of Taneytown and new land and other things. And so we haven't planned to make a decision until we get a formal partnership and start to talk, on the same level with everybody. I'll let it go at that.
And I think the project's a good idea, but the details are far from being worked out. My first reaction would be, gee whiz, if we went to the land at Memorial Park, you'd almost be limitless as far as being able to expand out there. But again, that's just my thought. It's sitting here, hearing it for the first time.
Right.
So I don't know what we need to do. I guess we'll have a new council next month, and it may be good to make plans after that new council is seated to get together with and discuss this thing and flesh out some of the details. In the meantime, I encourage everybody to be thinking of things like that. Where do you think it should go? What do you think it should be? All those questions that Steve has raised. Again, I think it's worthy of further consideration. I would encourage council to consider it further, but to say how it's going to be right now, I think is premature. I think we have to ask ourselves and have a lot of discussion. And I think, if we're willing and you're willing, we can come to some middle ground, I think.
I believe what you said is entirely true, and we believe it too. I would just like to maybe formalize the working together thing rather than give and take. You speak, we go off and make a pitch and all. I'd like to see if we can reach some point where we have a joint group between the city and the Lions Club working together in mutual agreement to talk to each other and share ideas and try to come to some decisions. So,
Mr. Mayor, when I served on the board of Carroll County General Hospital, we were building the Billingsley building, and we had a large board, but then we had a small board that actually ran the hospital. And we all were given a task to go out and raise funds for that. The town would have to make, I agree with you, would have to make a commitment to move forward if you were going to do the fundraising part. So I think time would be of the essence on making that kind of a commitment to a plan. So I wouldn't wait too long to do that.
But I don't think we can make that decision after a 10-minute 10-minute delegation to us. I think we need some time to discuss this ourselves and actually figure out where we think the city should fit into this.
Right, and our purpose tonight was to give you the feedback you asked us to focus in on, whether it's right or wrong, shake things up a little bit, and try then to move forward with the city collectively. We're not going to do this alone as a Lions Club.
We thank you for that, and the report was exactly what we're looking for, and we thank you for that. And this will give us some a starting point. This will give us some meat to discuss. So we will make plans to meet in the future, and then discuss it. And we'll once that meeting has occurred, we'll get back together.
All right, and the Lions Club thanks all of you for your listening to us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Good.
All right, we're coming up to public comment on non-agenda items, and I noticed there were 4 mayoral candidates in the room, and I thought I'd turn the gavel over at this point to Mayor Pro Tem Foster so that I'll be included in the statement, but I wanted to make a statement, if you don't mind, before we go into the comments on non-agenda items. So, Mayor Pro Tem, could you make a short
Okay, good evening, everyone. And as the mayor said, tonight's meeting is where the public is allowed to make comments on non-agenda items. I would just like to remind everybody that
Thank you so much.
this will not be a forum for political statements of any kind. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, now I will ask if anybody has any public comments pertaining to non-agenda items. Remember, we have 3 minutes. Okay, Marvin in the back.
Marvin Flickinger. 2 months ago, I asked if I could get, under the Freedom of Information Act, if I could get a list of city expenditures that the city used to defend themselves against the charges and proposals and conduct of the Fraser Group in the last 4 years. I have that information here. I have 16 pages of itemized attorney fees, but I'm only going to read the survey of the whole thing. The water bill and sewer bill hearings, which Councilman Fraser wanted a 50% reduction in sewer fees. He's pretty adamant about that and had his constituents adamant about that. So the city felt it necessary to defend themselves to the Davenport group. Their report came back that if the Fraser proposal would go forward, the city would be bankrupt in 4 to 5 years. Their fee for this study, along with the local legal fees, amounts to $52,726. The next thing was the ethics referendum, which the city wanted to put an ethics provision in the charter, met with opposition from the Fraser Group. They got a petition going, got enough people to sign it to force it to referendum. The city won out on that. The total fees the city paid out for that was $16,620. Robin Fraser's lawsuit about the open meetings violation, she lost the first suit, she appealed it, she lost the second suit. The total fees the city spent to defend themselves was $26,243. The Code of Conduct legal expenses, along with other miscellaneous legal fees, amounted to $13,408. The Adelaide trial, which she disrupted the meeting and went to court, cost the city to defend themselves $9,523. Oh, I forgot up here, it says newspaper expense, $123. The total for that, anybody standing up? $118,642 for the city to defend themselves in those 5 items. Footnote here says claims were also submitted to local government insurance trust. The local government insurance trust expended over $50,000 for outside counsel, which will likely impact the city going forward. The direct expense is not included in the below total of $118,000. Now the city won all 5 of those situations. Fraser's didn't win any. The only loser in this was the city taxpayers, $118,642. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's try to keep our comments to 3 minutes. Anyone else want to make any comments?
Robin Fraser, Bentley Street. The liberal Maryland legislature majority rolls over the conservative minority on almost every issue, and they have no respect for the First Amendment rights, making it difficult for citizens to speak. If you've ever tried to testify down in Annapolis, you know it's an all-day event, maybe an all-night event. And they change the rules, and they do whatever they can to crush the minority point of view. And they don't allow signs, I don't think, in the chambers, which is a First Amendment right infringement. And they've just forgotten what their role is, which is not to rule, but is to protect the citizens' rights that come from God, not from man. So with their powerful majority, they essentially silence the minority conservatives and representatives of the minority conservative opinion. And so they pass a lot of really poor legislation.
Does this have anything to do with our city business?
Yes.
If you get to the point, we're almost out of time, I think.
I will be. And so one of such bill that they passed this year that falls into that scenario as them rolling over top of the minority point of view is the raising of the minimum wage to $15. And I was just wondering whether that affected the city of Taneytown, whether you have people that earn less than $15 an hour, and how that will affect your budget, and if you've considered that in your budget. So I just bring that up for you to think about if it hadn't come to your mind.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else care to make any comments?
Barbara Cook, Clubside Drive. I just wanted to remind everybody how fortunate we are to have these trees blooming. It's so beautiful. And I got to drive up here to this meeting time tonight in the daylight. I'm telling you, I am happy.
Okay, good.
Barbara, that was wonderful. I don't know that I've ever recall a better speech from Barbara Cook. That was great. Anyone else care to make any comments?
Barbara Helter-Bridle, 435 East Baltimore Street. I'd just like to encourage everyone to go to the Torrington History Museum. They're opening again this weekend with a wonderful display of how World War II affected everyone here in Torrington on the home front. So I think it'd be something nice to do over the weekend.
What time is that? Do you know the time?
1
I
o'clock.
don't.
I
No, it's 1 o'clock on.
I think it's 1 o'clock.
No, I mean the time of
Sunday.
day. That's this weekend. What time of day?
Judy's gonna check and find out.
It's Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Sunday at 1 o'clock. I think it's got a card in the mail, the grand opening of that.
Oh, yeah, we got this in the
It
mail.
is.
Anyone else care to make any comments? All right, hearing none, I'd like to ask the council if there's any conflicts of interest that appears in tonight's agenda.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
All right. We're getting into resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. I think we wanted a comment or two from Jim or Jay before we get into that.
I just wanted to call to your attention that for Monday night, we're going to have one additional resolution to formalize the decision that was made last month with regard to increasing the salary for the next mayor and council.
Okay.
So that needs to be done by resolution, so that will be on for Monday night's agenda.
All right, I'm not sure that I formally closed the public hearing for the budget and the tax rate, but I do so at this time.
Mr. Mayor, while we're on the topic that the acting city manager said, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Okay, I was looking at the budget with the new mayor and council salaries, and it looks like the amount that's budgeted is greater than what it's going to be. So by my calculations, it should be $21,400 instead of $28,000. That being that only the new members will receive the increase, is that correct?
The amount that was budgeted was for everyone to receive the increased amount. I think we certainly can delve into the charter a little bit more on that. It's not terribly clear, and one sentence talks about members of the council, another sentence talks about the council, and it kind of waffles back and forth. So I think there is some ambiguity there. I believe historically, when the council has approved an increase for the incoming council, it was applied to everyone.
Yeah.
That's historically how it's done.
I think if we check the charter, because I had read the charter checking because it didn't seem quite right. I haven't seen anywhere that allows a board to give themselves a raise, and that's the only reason I bring that up. Does Jay know anything further about that?
Jay knows some more about that. That we looked a little bit onto this just to make sure, because the theory is you're going to raise the salaries, and it's not going to take effect till July, no matter what happens.
Right.
And so the charter language that the city manager talked about is there, but there's also language in the Maryland Constitution, and there's 2 Attorney General opinions that deal with that as well. So it's going to take a little bit of vetting to make sure even our charter provision is consistent with the Constitution. So it's not a done deal yet, but either way, you need to authorize the budget, and you need to authorize doing it. The charter is pretty specific about how you do it. If you don't pass the resolution prior to the election, then it doesn't do it at all. So that's why the need for a resolution on Monday.
Good. All right, well, let's move into the ordinances and resolutions. We have for adoption on Monday night, Ordinance 02, 2019, fiscal year 2020 budget ordinance. Do you have any questions on that? We have Ordinance 03, 2019. That's Chapter 94. That refers to the installation and operation of small wireless telecommunications facilities in the public rights of way, which we've talked about for long. Anybody have any questions about that?
Just one brief question. As everybody knows, over the last couple of weeks, we've had a resident who has reached out to us with some information regarding, safety issues and related issues. And I was just I would like to ask Jay if there was a way that we could work, or if it was possible to work into the ordinance in some way, shape, or form, maybe as a part of the application process or something. I don't know whether you would call it like a statement or an affidavit or something where the company would state that they are in compliance with regulations regarding things like health and safety.
This has come up quite often across the state because a lot of people are concerned about the health impacts. And we've stated here in the past that you have to follow the FCC guidelines. So whatever, if they say it's safe, okay? There's no other So your ordinance on page 8, item 21, says the following. Applications shall include written commitment statements to the effect that A, the applicant's facility shall at all times and without exception be maintained in a safe manner and in compliance with all conditions of all permits as well as all applicable and permissible local codes, ordinances, regulations, and all applicable city, state, federal laws, rules, and regulations, unless specifically granted relief by the city in writing. So that would tell me that when they're going to make an application, they have to state that they're in compliance. And one of the things that another town that just adopted a similar ordinance this week did was they didn't change their ordinance because they said the application is going to submit that. They're going to come up with an application. That's an administrative thing that you all don't have to deal with. And their engineer said it's not any different than when somebody applies to construct anything. Their engineer, this applicant's engineer, has to give like a certification of materials. It's not the underwriter laboratory that you see on the back of electric things, but it's sort of like that. It's saying that, hey, this complies with section whatever of the FCC. That way, if the FCC changes their regulation, these would change automatically because you have to comply with that. So I think it's covered in the ordinance, and I don't think you need to change the ordinance. I think that it can be included in the application, but if you would desire to do something different, we can do it.
All right, any other questions? All right, next item would be Ordinance 04, 2019, the fiscal year, the 1920 water sewer rate. Do I have any questions on that?
Mr. Mayor, if I might just have a minute. I had held up this sheet on the last meeting about what the water and sewer rates were in 2012. The old rate was $4.52 for water and $7.02 for sewer. And the new rate in 2012 is $5.11 for the rate for sewer, and the new rate was $10.04. The current proposal before us is $14.24 per 1,000 gallons, which is the same as it is this past year. I had laid out 3 legs of a review, and I really hope that the council, my fellow council members, would think about it. They shifted $329,000 into the water sewer fund in order to get some of these increases from where we were then to now. When that money's refunded.
Excuse me, Councilman, I think we explained this to you last meeting.
Well, I'm sorry, I just want to explain that when that money's refunded, that's worth 3% on the rate. So I was proposing a reduction to $12.96 per 1,000 gallons, to take up the 9%, the 3% for that.
Well, you know,
the 3%.
Councilman, at this point, we have a budget ready to approve on Monday night. We've held a public hearing and heard public comment. Now, if anything is changed or added to that budget between now and Monday night, it'll be discussed on Monday night. But what you're bringing up has been brought up ad infinitum for the last 4 years.
No, this is very specific to this year's budget. I spent over 30 hours studying the budget, Mr. Mayor, and there is a blossoming of revenues because of the new construction we have in town, and we can see a clear need to reduce sewer fees now because of the increased number of housing connections we have, combined with the shifting of these monies between funds from the last year.
But
this
all,
is the year
all of
for a
this
reduction
has been
in sewer rates.
explained, I think, at one point. And, you know, to restate this over and over again really doesn't benefit anyone. I mean,
if I could persuade you that there is a surplus of money above what we need in order to pay expenses, debt, and capital projects that would allow a budget decrease, then it would not be a waste of time if I could persuade my fellow council members that the sewer rates are too high for the current revenue stream.
We're going to move on unless anybody wants to add credence to what.
Well, the only thing I would say, Mr. Mayor, is it doesn't make sense to me to remove revenue from a balanced budget for some sort of surplus that doesn't exist. That's what I'm not understanding what you're saying.
well,
But it's been explained as
But
the mayor said, so we
we've
can
said
move
this,
on.
we've explained this many, many times before, but it doesn't
Exactly.
sink in.
It's a
Exactly.
myth that we don't have more revenue than we had last year.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to point out one other thing. In the questions that Councilman Frazier submitted to city staff regarding the $329,000 that had apparently been shifted, they couldn't figure out what that was or where that came from.
Correct.
Well, I remember Henry Hine brought it forth, and I was here when it happened, and it resulted in an increase in the sewer rate at that time, Mr. Joe.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you over the audience.
I remember when Henry Hine brought the shifting of the salaries here. I've been on the council for 4 years, and I've been watching the town not hold the constant real rate and not reduce water and sewer rates now for almost 4 years. And the fact is, with this growth we have, Joe, we can afford a reduction in the sewer rate. It's
All right,
extraordinarily high.
It's obvious you're the only one of that opinion. So let's move on to ordinance 05-2019, the 2020 tax rate. Anyone have any questions on that?
Well, I certainly do. I had prepared a document last month and tried to give it to the council members, but nobody received it, and I have it with me tonight if anybody in the audience would like a copy. The state assesses property on a triennial assessment, and this past year, South Carroll was reassessed. And if you read your Taneytown record, you'll find an explanation of what answers we got from the governor's office in the last month about what happened to make some assessments go up over $100,000.
Well,
What happened was
you
that
you
they
you have
changed
any comprehension on the difference of property values in South Carroll versus Northwest Carroll?
No, I'm just saying this year it's Taneytown's chance, and we need to give relief before this takes effect in Taneytown. The fact is that they moved from 92% of the value to 97%, the Departments of Assessment and Taxation in the recent assessments, and we confronted the governor about it, and he sent us down to the chief person in the Department of Assessment and Taxation, and they said that they're attempting to get to 100% of assessed value to do that. I said, well, don't you realize that's a tax increase to increase assessments by that amount? So if we hold the same rate, Taneytown looks to receive a substantial increase in real estate taxes if we fail to act. So I'm going to propose on Monday a penny,
Well, this is all
a 36% rate
maybe,
instead
isn't
of
it?
a
There's nothing-
37% rate. When
This is
Rob,
all-
my wife, was county commissioner, the county gave back 2 cents one year, they gave back 1 cent one year, and they gave back 1/4% another year when the same thing happened to assessments. And I'm calling for the
Well, you
council
know,
to wake up to this fact.
if we didn't
Read their
spend
Taneytown record.
$118,000 in unnecessary legal fees, we could have reduced the rate 2 cents.
Well,
Think
Mr.
of
Mayor,
that.
That's just a
Mr. Mayor.
myth. That didn't happen.
All right,
So-
let's move on to ordinance 06-2019. Fiscal year 2019 operating budget amendment number 3. Emergency adoption, section C 209B of the City of Taneytown Charter and Code. Now explain to me all that.
Okay, we're going to talk about, during my report and during new business, item number 3, the acquisition of the real property that we've been talking about for several months. We're going to actually talk about it in public tonight. And to fund that, you need to amend the budget so that we can actually have the funds to do it. You're aware of that. We need to make that budget amendment happen right now, so you need to do it by suspending the rules, which our charter calls an emergency. So you'll take 2 votes, one to suspend the rules, to declare an emergency, and one to pass the charter amendment, so that you can fund the purchase within the budget.
It's not a charter amendment, is it? Did you mean to
No,
say
if
charter
I
amendment?
said charter amendment, I meant so that you can fund the budget amendment.
Budget amendment, thank you.
This is the fiscally responsible way to do it, because you fund it and then you do it. If we didn't do it this way, we would still go ahead with the purchase because you've ratified the contract, but then you'd have to come back at the end of the year and do a deficit funding. And we can do it the right way, we should do it the right way.
Can I ask a question before we do that, those procedures, Mr. Mayor?
Right.
Yes.
I would like to ask Jim a question. When we talked in the office, didn't you say that you could come up with the amount of this money from the current investments under the current budget numbers? My thought was that you had already gathered the funds to meet the offer that was made through the process of purchasing the property. And we didn't need to amend the budget in order to buy this piece of property.
We had to demonstrate for the seller that we had funds available to make the purchase.
Right, and we completed that already.
And essentially that was providing them with a copy of a bank statement. That did not budget the funds to be expended.
Right.
So we demonstrated to the seller that we had the funds available, but this makes it official and makes it eligible
So,
for us to
Mr.
spend.
Mayor, I would move, I can't make a motion tonight, but on Monday I'll move.
Well, wait a minute.
That we just introduce the legislation like it's been introduced now and then enacted on Monday. We don't need to suspend the rules to do that. We just need to introduce the legislation to allocate the money and then approve it.
Our attorney advises we need to suspend the rules and make a motion to adopt ordinance 06-2019 tonight.
Your rules require you to introduce an ordinance, and this is an ordinance, a budget amendment is an ordinance, in one meeting, and then pass it at another meeting.
So it's for the purpose of introduction of it tonight that you want us to do
No,
that?
on Monday night, it has to be introduced since this is a work session. So that's the
But we
official introduction. And what you need to do is suspend the rules so that you can introduce it and pass it in the same session.
So that'll happen Monday night,
Monday is what you're looking for.
not tonight.
Not tonight, no.
No.
This is just, we're all setting it up for Monday, but Monday would be when the budget would need to be amended because we have to settle on the project this month.
Gotcha.
Which means you can't wait till May.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Following is Resolution 2019-04, the water allocation for April. Anybody have any questions on that?
No, sir.
All right, let's move into the city manager's report. Jim?
Not a whole lot new this month with regard to the capital projects and capital equipment plan. The mayor and I chatted briefly about that, and since we did not have the retreat this year, we had the police department matters to discuss on that Saturday. We decided that in lieu of holding another special meeting or a retreat, that we would just chip away at the capital projects and capital equipment. With the upcoming election and we definitely will have two new council members after the election. We felt it was best just to wait and begin those discussions with the new council. So we'll chip away at that. Maybe we'll do a section each month. We might do streets one month, water one month, and then just kind of work our way through it and build in an extra half an hour or something like that to the meeting, or and just work our way through it during the workshops. The Sewell annexation, the mayor and I met with the Sewells and their prospective builder and engineer. They have put together a concept plan for an age-restricted community, and we will expect that to be presented to the incoming mayor and council in the foreseeable future. So that's moving along. It's encouraging that they've already garnered interest with a builder at this point. So that could be a very viable project. The Syrian property, trying to work out with the county at this point a means to divide the 4 acres off of the property, since it is in the county and it's agricultural. There are some, it's a totally different process than we would have within the city for that. So we have to work through with the county what our options are there and how long that would take. And Mrs. Syrian is concerned about the timeline on doing that because it sounds like that's potentially going to hold up the ag preservation easement if the property is not actually divided. Last thing that's on the printed report, we just haven't had the chance to delve into the charter and code updates. That's really just on hold at this point in time. Couple quick things that are not in the typed report. Update on the Roberts Mill Run Stormwater Retrofit project. The county is hoping to get the RFP out next week. We're still, myself and CDM Smith still have a couple comments that the county hasn't addressed on the RFP. The idea is that it's going to be bid as 2 two items in the bid. So we may have a different contractor bidding on the bridge and or we could have a different contractor awarded the bid for the bridge versus the stormwater pond itself. And we're working through all the details on that, but we're kind of zeroed in on some inspection and shop drawing details at this point that we want to make sure the city's protected with what the county sends out. So, and they've been great to work with. It's just been a lot going on with it. And last thing, the election board met today and they did certify the candidates for the May election, and I'll slide the mic down to Clara to read the slate.
The Taneytown Board of Elections has certified the following candidates for the May 6, 2019 election. For the office of mayor, Paul Chamberlain, Donald Frazier, Jim McCarron, and Bradley Wance. And for council, Barry Guckus, Daniel Haynes, and Darrell Hale.
That's it, unless there are questions.
Questions for Jim? Or Clara? All right, any questions on the departmental reports? I'm not sure that's even right. The department reports, I should say.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to just call to your attention from the Public Works Department. The county is kind of cracking down on some items that are in the recycling stream that are not supposed to be. The requirements changed many months ago with regard to plastic bags. It used to be that you could bag them up in one bag and throw them in the commingled recycling. Several months ago, the county stopped that. I think they've moved to a more automated sorting, and the bags apparently gum up the equipment and cause delays and malfunctions and such. So plastic bags are not supposed to be recycled. They're, folks are encouraged to take them to the grocery store where they have the specific plastic bag recycling receptacles. But the county is starting to charge for recycling if it contains bags. And we've gotten word that another municipality has been charged because their recycling loads include plastic bags. So we're trying to get the word out through social media, so you'll be seeing something like that if it didn't come out today. I didn't
We
see
need
it
to
yet.
put a lot of effort behind that.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to call that to your attention, if you do see an increase in our tipping fees, it may very well be related to that if we're not able to get our
Well,
citizens to
if
stop
we,
putting waste in the
if that
stream.
happens, we need to think of a plan on how to make it unhappen.
So just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, because things may be happening before next month.
Okay. Just a comment on Nancy's report where she talks about, I may be wrong here, wait a minute. Number one, Frederick Street. I talked to the tenant there the other day, and he's planning to come back and reopen as soon as she has her operation, so. Did you hear anything different than that?
No, that's what she said the other day.
Councilwoman,
She's waiting for her surgery, and then she's planning on coming back.
what you told me. So I said, that's great.
Under departmental reports, if I might, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank our town manager and also Mr. Speaks for visiting this flooding situation that's on Daisy Drive. I had a chance to meet with property owners, and I appreciate the attention that they've given to cleaning up the trash that's in the gully and also trying to abate and clear these drains out that are on Spring Avenue. So I want to thank you all for the work that you've done on that.
All right, how about legal report? Jay, what do you have for us tonight?
I'm going to not give a full report right now. I'll just say that there is this handout on your desk, and it's talked about real property acquisition. And I would like to go over that when you get to item number 3 of new business. So I'll just save my time till then.
All righty, let's move into new business. Monthly financial report. Anybody have any questions on the monthly financial report? It'll be up for approval on Monday. How about the accounts payable? Any questions on accounts payable? Very well, that'll also be up for approval. Now we're at number 3, ratification of land purchase contract.
Okay, back to me again. So this, I'm going to talk about this, and the purpose of this discussion is to kind of lay the stage out so that the public understands what the council has been trying to do on behalf of the city for many months, and talk to you about what needs to happen on Monday night to make everything go ahead. A lot of this is review, since we've had closed meetings to talk about this. So as you all are aware, the city is in a real estate acquisition deal for parcels right now that are located on Stumptown Road. And there are 2 parcels on Stumptown Road. They're owned by the same owner and they're adjoining, but they're actually 2 separate parcels. And I've labeled one parcel A. Parcel A contains 20.54 acres. Its physical address is 4166 Stumptown Road. It was listed on the market, so these were on the market and on the multiple list service, so we did not approach property owners, I guess, unasked. The listing price was $250,000, and it's within the city limits. It's zoned residential. The parcel B that adjoins that is 6 acres. It doesn't have a street address because there's no residence there. There is a residence on Stumptown Road, 4166. However, it's reached its useful life, so it's not necessarily a dwelling that you could dwell in at this point. So parcel B has 6 acres. It's parcel 440 next to that. The listing price on the multiple list was $125,000, and that's also within the city limits and zoned residential. So if you add those 2 prices together, the list price for total was $375,000. The city, after negotiating this contract, is going to purchase both properties for $300,000. So the next thing that you see there is BDT. So the buyer is to determine the settlement date. However, the contract date must settle before April 14th, which is a Sunday. And so we are looking for settlement next week, which is why we talked about the budget. The background on this, just so I can set the stage and then we can go from there with the discussion, is this came up on October 3rd. Councilman Wance brought this up during a closed session, which was scheduled to talk about real estate acquisition. And at that point in time, the council gave direction to investigate the property and set a limit for the negotiation of the price. After that happened, the mayor directed that we do an appraisal. So we had an outside company do an appraisal to make sure that the values we were going to pay would be consistent and in the best interest of the city. And the appraisal value for parcel A came in at $225,000. You recall I told you the list price was $250,000. And the appraisal price for parcel B came in at $75,000, and the list price was $125,000 on that. So if you add both appraisal prices, you can see that the city paid the appraisal value of $300,000. After that was discussed with the mayor, and then a negotiation with the property owners, because there's several owners that own each parcel, we reached an agreement of sale. We then had another closed session on March 6th, at which time we reviewed the general terms of the agreement of sale to determine whether the city wanted to move forward. Even though you had given prior authorization, you did want to move forward, and there was discussion and a vote at that night to continue to move forward. And then from that point, the mayor executed the contract of sale and the assignments and documents necessary. Contract of sale was dated March 10th, 2019, and settlement will occur prior to the 14th, as I stated. So what needs to happen from a legal standpoint is you've already given authorization, you've already approved the contract in closed session, but what I'd like to see on Monday night is a ratification of the contract. So on Monday night, when this agenda item comes up, you could make a motion and a second in a discussion and ratify that, realizing that you're ratifying an action you already took. So, going back on that action would actually be a difficult task. You also need to prior to that, which will be on the agenda, approve the budget amendment. As I told you already, if you don't approve the budget amendment, as we talked about, the contract will still go through, the purchase will still happen, but you'll have a negative budget deficit that you'll have to fund at the end of the year. So, and that's the details on that. And if you have any questions or any specifics, I'd be happy to talk about it.
The actual list prices, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Frazier, I've already asked for the floor, if I may.
I've given the floor to Brad. You'll be next.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I don't have any specific questions. I do want to thank the council and you for the work in doing this, since I brought this up back in October with the initial vision of becoming what I called Taneytown Festival Park. I'm excited this is going through, and I think it's going to be a great addition to our park system. I just want to make clear I appreciate the council's work on this as well as the attorney. Thank you.
Okay, now Councilman Frazier.
Okay, sorry about that. The, if you add the list price, that would be $375,000. So I think that, once again, I agree with Mr. Wantz that this is a great purchase of land inside the city limits for future park property, and I'm very excited about it myself.
All right, any other comments or questions? Very good. I guess item number 4 has already happened, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a little out of order on that. Okay.
All right. We have time for public comments pertaining to agenda items. Anybody have any comments pertaining to the items that have appeared on the agenda?
I would like to comment on this sports arena or sports building. I'm in favor of it. However, I think it is way lopsided. It was presented to me, and maybe I didn't get it right, but it would be a partnership. And for me, a partnership is somewhat equal. And this is what I wrote down as this gentleman was talking. He said he'd like a partnership, but the city would apply the land, the electricity, the sewer, the water, the security, I guess that would be the police, and every time this hand goes down, this one should go up. And in the future, the city could take it over with employees, insurance, and build a parking garage. In the meantime, there's no parking land over there. And I don't see this much as a partnership to me. It sounds a little like a boondoggle. There's land right across from Memorial Park. If they want to build this, wonderful. If the city wants to help them buy a piece of land, that's grand, and just give it to them. But I don't see much benefit here. The city does not provide water, entertainment for the young people. There's many things they don't do. And so I think this needs to be thought through a little bit more. And if we can get it down to where it's a partnership, I would say it's fine and dandy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make any comments on agenda items?
Robin Frazier Bentley. I wanted to add to that conversation. I also think it's a great idea. It would be something that would be interesting and needed for the young people. And but I thought I heard him say that he wouldn't even mind if the city sold it to them for $1 and they took over the project. And in the county, we had projects like that where we had an old school or something, and we put it out the bid for the person who had the best idea and gave it away to pretty much to who wanted to use it, and offered it even. We were offering a building to the town who said they wanted to buy it for $1. So if the Lions Club really wants to do a project and it's been a property that you can't sell or it's kind of expensive to deal with it, giving it to them for $1 sounds like a good idea to me.
That's not 3.
Well, you know, we all heard about this.
What was that?
We're having
Hour
trouble with the
ago.
timer again.
And we've got a lot of questions to settle, so there's really no point in debating this tonight. I mean, anything we say is useful, I guess, in future discussions, but those future discussions are in the future.
Mr. Mayor, if I have, before you go on to adjournment, I just would like to say it's really exciting to see these people with a vision and a group of people that can actually make a project like that come to fruition. It was terrific that you invited them to be part of the meeting today as a special delegation.
Good. All right. If nothing else, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. See you all Monday.